Representative Proctor, thank you for being so patient. Thank you for coming today.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. So I don't want to rehash everybody else's testimony, so in the interest of time, I'll just say a few things. First of all, I think we've identified that the MVRA has a lot of problems. I would just note as a sidebar that the MVRA is also why we can't ask for documentary proof of citizenship before we register people to vote, because a federal court said we can't do that because the MVRA or the federal form doesn't include it, so we can't add to the federal form. But I was pretty shocked when I found out that it's not just a motor voter law, it's also a Medicaid voter law and a SNAP voter law and a TANF voter law. And I haven't been in this building long enough that I don't think $1 million is a big deal. It is a big deal that we're spending $1 million, give or take, to send out these unsolicited voter registration forms. But I'm also concerned about two other things. And my favorite quote of the day was from Mr. Clay Barker when he said, asymmetric partisan effect. I think that it has an asymmetric partisan effect when you send voter registration forms to people who are dependent on the government for subsidies and benefits to survive. I think that that's going to produce an outcome from all those people who register by that means. And we've also raised the issue of non-citizen voting and non-citizens getting registered to vote. It happens. It's happening at the DMV. I will remind you of testimony that we had last year that led to the passage of House Bill 2020, which requires the DMV quarterly to provide a list of non-citizens who've received driver's licenses. The reason we had to do that is because when the Secretary of State came in and testified, he said the last time that they were able to get the DMV to give them that list was right after the 2024 election, and they found 80 non-citizens on the voter rolls, and they think 20 of them voted. And I'll direct your attention to the news. Over the last couple months, the mayor of Coldwater, Kansas got reelected after voting for 29 years and is apparently a non-citizen. They've just indicted 2 other non-citizens who got registered to vote, and they're investigating several more based on testimony that we heard yesterday in my committee. I'm also concerned about, and one of the initial conferees raised this, a couple years ago, or maybe I think it was last year, we passed SB 5. The Biden Bucks bill, right? Because President Biden had issued Executive Order 14019, which was directing federal agencies to use money appropriated for other reasons to register people to vote. And we had to pass that law to say, hey, agencies in Kansas, you are not to do that. You are only to use federal funds for the purposes that they are given by Congress or by the legislature. And so I'm really, really curious which money they were using to send out all of these voter registration forms, because if it was federal money, they are exceeding the requirements of federal law and the requirements set by Congress for that money. So I'll just wrap up here by saying that based on what I've heard here today, and based on the Inspector General's investigation, we're going to have a hearing next week on Thursday on House Bill 2498, which is basically a mirror bill to the DMV bill. If they're going to send voter registration forms to non-citizens, I want them to tell the Secretary of State every non-citizen that is getting benefits from their agencies, because the Secretary of State needs to have that information so that they can scrub our voter rolls and make sure that these folks aren't getting on our voter rolls. Because, like I said, the MVRA won't let us do it on the front end. It won't let us determine that they're a citizen on the front end. So we need to go back behind these agencies and make sure that these folks aren't ending up on the voter rolls. And it's not about there's some vast conspiracy to let non-citizens vote. I am not saying that. What I am saying is voter confidence is an essential element of our form of government and our way of life. And we owe it to the voters of the state of Kansas to be able to assure them that their vote is not being diluted by invalid votes by non-citizens. And so it is a common sense measure to scrub our voter rolls and make sure these folks don't end up on the voter rolls. And I'll end there and answer any questions, Madam Chair.
Representative Tarwater, then Representative Hoy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chairman Proctor, if the state sends a voter registration to a non-citizen, aren't we culpable in that? I mean, is that not entrapment if they fill that out, send it in, and get in trouble?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of these folks, English is a second language. It's very much analogous to what's happened at the DMV. I talked to a guy. He was an Australian citizen. He's since become naturalized, and he said the first time he went to the DMV to get a driver's license, because to get a driver's license, a real ID, you have to present proof you are who you say you are and proof you're in the country legally. He handed him his Australian passport and he handed him his green card, and then that clerk asked him, do you want to register to vote? And of course, he speaks English as his first language, so he said, I don't think I'm allowed to do that, mate. But if imagine a similar situation where you've got somebody who has difficulty speaking English and they just want their driver's license and they're just saying yes to every question so they can get their driver's license. They're getting on the voter rolls. This is not a hypothetical situation, and I agree. I think that you are entrapping that person. You are complicit in the crime that they're committing, maybe inadvertently. I'm not assigning nefarious intent. State employees are overworked and underpaid. I acknowledge that, but you're right. They are abetting a crime inadvertently, but they are abetting a crime.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate your indulgence. Representative Proctor, you started by saying the National Voter Registration Act has, quote, a lot of problems. There are 6 states that are exempt from the National Voter Registration Act, and we wouldn't have to do any of this if we were exempt from that, if we allowed same-day voter registration. Is that something that you would support in order to avoid this whole shenanigan today?
I do not support that, because I think that our hardworking county clerks that also have to do taxes, that also have to do all the minutes for their county commission meetings, also have to do a lot of the things. We need to afford them the time to examine those applications and make sure that the person's an eligible voter. And I'm concerned. I'm concerned about same-day registration, because you're putting all that on a poll worker who's in the middle of running an election.